It all works really nice, and everything has its place, and everything will remain there in its place. And also it's how I think for myself, it's also how I do solve problems. I think solving problems mathematically, visually, color-wise, technically, on that airplane there's about 5 to 7 different types of metals, and how would I solve each one of those problems, getting the metal to look uniquely different from the next. And it was a challenge, but I love a challenge, and getting it right is important for me.
That's more than a challenge.
Getting it right is really important for me.
Yeah.
Getting it right, even down to the chipped paint on the airplane, getting it right is very important to me. Getting the cable just right at the right angle, and the color, and then the shadows, and then some of the reflection that was going on.
The gaskets and
the
rubber
gaskets,
and the clamps that hold the rubber. I mean, for those of us who are engine folk, and you look at that and you say, wow, that's, I'd love to go and take a picture of that engine and put them side by side,
right?
You know, and really see what was going on there.
Right.
There's issues with, okay, you're talking about descriptive issues, aesthetics there in terms of representation of one thing over another. You talk about mathematics, which brings us into scale.
Right.
I mean, to start something like this, to keep everything in scale, I mean, are you starting with a particular piece of the engine, and from there you build out everything based on that scale? I mean, how did you approach this?
There's a certain visual. I'm pretty much capable of seeing something and then transferring that image, you know, pretty close, you know, on a canvas. I mean, I've been drawing and painting since I was really young,
right? Really
little, and at this time, so I did have, this was a photograph that a friend of mine had sent me, and the photo, when I was sent it, it was very tiny on my iScreen, and I just loved it. I fell in love with the image.
So you first saw it on an iPhone?
Yes.
A little 2-inch by 2-inch image.
Yes, and then with some research and some ongoing discussion, found out about this plane, but also another part of the story about this particular plane is growing up out here on the Delta, especially in the summer, sleeping on top of a boat every night, waking up to the sound of the crop duster in the distance, 6 o'clock every morning, as you're just waking up on top of the boat, and it's flying as you're anchored right at the levee, and on the other side of the levee is a field that he's going to crop dust, and this coming just, you know, I don't know how many feet exactly, but just above your head, and having it fly by, and that going on for years, every summer for years and years. So I actually have an affinity to this Stearman crop duster.
That's a crazy experience.
It was, and so I have, you know, and I have those memories, and I guess I would say to a point, I have a pretty photographic memory, and I always have. That was something that was pretty obvious when I was really little. I can look at an image and I can go home and translate that pretty accurately, and that I can still do the same thing, and it's more of an internal thing. On this one and this one, I made changes in the image that I saw to make it fit more in my canvas in a way that I felt was more creative. This one over here, actually, to a point, I had to add on to the motorcycle because of the wrap And because of where the image was, I had actually lost the image here and here and here. And so, you know, I had to look at a few motorcycles to kind of get an idea or an image in my head of how I would round that out or how that shadow would work. And then I had to wrap it, you know, 2.5 inches around my canvas. So there's an additional, on this piece here, I think there's an additional 8 inches side to side, an additional probably 8 or more inches lengthwise.
That you had to
visualize in my mind and then take it from there. And I can't explain exactly how I do that. I can't explain it. It's just part of what I do.
That's what I'm here for, friends. I'm here to get deep into that mind because it is a very difficult thing to do.
And some of it, some of what I am doing is not exactly accurate of what I see on the image. Some of it is more abstract. Some of piece-wise, it's pretty much all correct. And again, this is the motorcycle is a one-on-one. This is roughly about the size of that motorcycle seat because I want it to be something that the viewer can feel that this is in the room. It's literally in the room. It has power. It has presence. It's technically accurate. And it's exciting. I want it to always feel, for the viewer, exciting and something that they can relate to.
Well, with first off, just how the light works in the chrome, the movement that you've been able to create with the chrome, you know, that alone, it's exciting. I look at the back tire and just how the shadow is coming through the brake, and you know, I love shadow, and I think it's one of those things as an artist that if you can understand and capture, I think it brings you to maybe what you call the museum level, but it creates depth and body and texture and excuse me, and things that if you don't understand how the importance of shadow and light and how to make that happen as an artist, it's got to be, it stops you at a spot where you really you're left at something that's really flat, I think. And, you know, so another reason why I'm behind the camera instead of in front of it being interviewed today.
Well, and again, this, and if it's in this, the engines that the current body work that I'm working on with involving the engines, because we had talked a little bit about light, and we talked about the horses, and I talked about the flattening of the background, and then, you know, using, like I can use maybe more of an eggshell medium in my paint. I can introduce that for different types of metals, and the more shiny chrome stuff, I can use the higher gloss. And this painting, and it depends on how, at this point, how you're capturing it in the light, but this painting in the right light, often it's at an angle, like standing here, becomes very three-dimensional because of the way that I've used my paint, which is also, it's not just about the paint capturing the light through the colors, your color usage. It's also, for me, it's about capturing the light through the color usage, through the mediums that I use to make it flat, semi-gloss, or high gloss. Because that's the metal of what I do. That's really the metal, right? This was my first experience ever doing metal. And I will tell all you artists out there, there's no YouTube, if you've never done chrome or metal before, there is nowhere you can find it on how to do it, except you just have to figure it out. And so over time, I just was figuring it out every day that I was literally building this engine.
Well,
and
you
the same
certainly
thing,
can see it through here, what you're saying, but go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing with the leather, the texture of the leather, the seat, you know, and so it's that continues also for me to be something that challenges me and that makes producing the engines really exciting.
Tell us about this
well,
one.
So this, well, first of all, I like to do things, because I don't have all my work here. Of course, this is my studio, but I like to do things in threes, and
Go ahead.
Man, there's a lot of setup time. Jesus Christ.
And so this motorcycle here, because of the amount of work involved, there is a lot of feeling in this motorcycle, although it's kind of more difficult to get emotion in this painting. This painting, after spending all the hours that I did on this one, and this one being so tight and so technical, I wanted to challenge myself and actually just do the motorcycle as I felt the motorcycle rather than as I saw the motorcycle. And I didn't want to feel inhibited about my color usage. I didn't want to feel inhibited about my brush stroke. I didn't want to feel inhibited. I just didn't want to feel inhibited. I wanted to put that motorcycle out there as I felt it and make it more playful. And I like the idea of also making it look like it's passing you by rather than standing still, which this one represents more of something that's standing still. And so this one represents movement, color, emotion, feeling. It's how I feel about it. And I like the idea of this motorcycle placed or hanging next to this motorcycle. And then there's also a third motorcycle that I envision, which is something that would be probably more just done in the values as a triptych. So in my mind, I see yet another motorcycle painting of the different styles. I'm pretty flexible. I'm very versatile. I do a lot of different types of painting, and because it's all exciting and challenging. What can I project in an image, and that's what this painting here is about. It's basically this motorcycle, but a different, it's a different feel. And probably there's going to be 2 more paintings of the airplane as well. A similar story. And it's not always typical that I do everything exactly representational, although it's been a pretty much common thread throughout my career. I do like things to look, hyper-photorealistic,
right.
more so than just.
One of my artists at the gallery came in just the other day, and I was talking about your eventual landing there and these pieces in particular, and we always have to put some sort of name on what we do: naturalism, impressionism.
Right,
so
exactly.
I use the term photorealism, and
right.
her face got all scrunched up, and she says, "Oh, photorealism. Why don't they just take a photograph of it?" And I said, "Yes, you can do that, but
right.
It's the ability to recreate that beauty that is so fascinating." And as I cut a half an hour's conversation short, but what I really got we talked about, I think, was part of that issue was a jealousy, to the extent that she's tried to go there and hasn't been able to get there. She's great in her impressionistic sort of side. She's
right.
watercolor, acrylics, beautiful work,
right.
beautiful, stunning work.
Right.
So as we talked a little bit more, I got a little
right.
deeper, and the rejection wasn't so much about the lifelessness. I think at one point she used the term lifelessness. Okay. I look at this and it's like there's absolutely
yeah.
no
it's
lack of life in any of these 3 pieces.
Right.
So. What do you think about that? I mean, how have people reacted to your work?
I always think it's an interesting conversation because photorealism, I've been having that conversation with not only people who have purchased my work, but also people, some of my peers, some associates, because I certainly have some associates that have strong feelings about photorealism. Actually, before I started really honing in and focusing in on what I'm doing currently, there was a time I can remember feeling a similar way, which was, well, why don't you just take a photograph? For me, it wasn't a jealousy thing. It was almost like, really, if you could just take a photograph, and everybody at some point will, why is that your new frontier? You know, aren't there better choices? I've done impressionistic, I've done expressionistic, I've pretty much done it all. So my work was actually coined by a gentleman that works at a gallery in New York when he saw it. And he said, oh, that's hyper-photorealism. So hyper-photorealism is actually where I can take that image, which you could easily have a photograph of, and I can accentuate, or I can bend it, I can accentuate it in ways that the camera can't. Right. Well, I mean, they have programs that will do that. But, you know, every bit of what I do is done by hand. I've had people ask me, other artists at times have asked me, did I use an airbrush? No, I didn't use an airbrush. Every stroke can be viewed, and I think that there's something very organic and charming about that. My paintings are not specifically flat to where they try to betray the viewer by imitating a photograph. They're not. You can walk up to these paintings and you can walk up to these paintings and you can see in some of the areas you can literally see and feel the struggle of the you know, the stroke, or you know, some things had to be switched around. So and then again, we're kind of back to, well, why not do an image that looks similar to a photograph? Why not? I've never built an airplane before, but now I can literally say I've built an airplane. I've built an airplane. It's the three-dimensional airplane. I built a motorcycle.
What an interest! I hadn't even thought.
I know what that feels
level.
like.
Wow.
Well, when people used to call me when I first started this, because prior to this I'd never done metal, so I had no experience in, and this, you know, this one in particular was a labor of love. And when I was working on this, people used to call me and I would be working because I was really, really working. And once you're in that groove or that zone, from beginning to painting until you feel that painting is done, it's a totally different reality, and it's a daily different reality. It didn't change because I clicked my brain off at the end of the day and went to bed. It was always, my mind was always in that, I'm building an engine. And people would call and I would say, I can't talk right now, I'm building a motorcycle.
When you say that you're constructing an engine, you are absolutely constructing an engine, because every one of those pieces, they have to be placed.
They do.
And they have to fit right?
They have to fit right. Right.
I had, you know what, we've met a number of times, talked about your work, and I have never thought about that at that level, which is pretty stunning. I mean, when you start to think about it, it's like, wow, that's true. You are.
Well, it's big. It's a big concept, and it's interesting because for some people, when they see the paintings and haven't met me, they don't know me by my signature, because my signature, I like it to be kind of nondescript. And so if I'm not available for them to meet me or for them to see me, they automatically assume it's a guy. Who is this guy? Who is this painter? You know, boy, he sure got everything right. And for me, you know, it was a challenge. I mean, I've, you know, aside from my childhood experience around, you know, planes, and we did some air shows and stuff like that. I've always had a passion for the motorcycles. I have a passion for cars, engines, anything that's shiny, big, powerful, and escape. For a journey, an adventure, anything that's, you know, and you know, a lot of times there's beauty in great design too. You know, there's beauty, the radial engine, although I've had pilots tell me that it wasn't necessarily a great design, but it's a beautiful thing to look at.
Right.
You know.
No, it definitely is a beautiful engine.
Yeah, and so getting familiar with push rods and, you know, gaskets and, this bolt goes here and this is why, and understanding, what every little piece and part was for specifically, and then painting it in a way that made it not only look like it was there, but I wanted it to look like it felt like it was there. And it's again being back to, it's in the room. It has a presence.
I can feel the pilot doing this, turning on the ignition, and this sucker moving. I mean,
Right.
that's what it.
Exactly.
Looking at all that happening, I just feel like if I just wait here long enough, that's the next step.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, this piece is interesting too, because when this piece gets ready to be hung in a museum, my request would be that it's about the height that it would stand on the tarmac, because I want it to look like you're looking up, like you would look up to that engine.
Get the sense of that engine, right?
Right, and I got some, like on the welds right here, I got it so specific, and then a little bit of stress fractures and just everything, because and that is, it's not photo pretty, it's about making it feel like it's sitting in the room, every little thing. And so that's why I do paintings like this too, is because I don't want to have to pay attention to that kind of detail all the time. I want to feel it and just play with it rather than labor over everything. But it's all art, and it's all exciting, and it's all about, as an artist, that's my life. My life is that journey. It's that journey of that painting and the geishas and the horses and all the architectural paintings I've done and everything I've designed. That's the journey. That's what I do every day. And the pursuit of conveying a presence and a feeling.
A self-definition of oneself, through your presentations and the adaptations that you've gone through over the time period to make those particular leaps, from, like you said, from impressionism, watercolors, and so on to this. So if you are, because again, it's arting about, and people who are watching this show love art.
Right.
I'm sure there's a lot of artists who are hoping to grow and are sitting there thinking, man, I would love to make that step.
Right.
So how would you counsel them? You said there were certain things about you personally, your photographic memory, that makes it easier for you to get here. If one doesn't have that, I don't even know if you can even address it on
well,
that
I
level.
think, but I feel like too, it's got to be something. What you're choosing to paint has to be something that you feel you either are familiar with, or you feel an affinity towards. You feel a passion towards. I love. It's again. I love fast cars, big engines. I love all of that. I think that it's really about that. If I didn't have a passion for what I'm painting, I think my paintings would be very flat. Right. If I wasn't excited, just for an example, this one painting that I'm working on is a bicycle, and it's in the surf on Ocean Beach in San Francisco. And the bike is an interesting, it's an interesting quote unquote piece of architecture or structure, but the way that it's on the beach and the tide was coming in, what excited me was I love the ocean. I used to live in San Francisco. I know that beach, but also seeing that bike, transportation, again, that's a soul horse for somebody, their travel, right? And then with the ocean coming in and the spray and the foam and the sand, everything happening at once, that dynamic, I went, I feel, again, it's like I go, I feel an affinity. I've got what that feels like, and that's what I'm going to go, I'll work on and trying to convey. Have I ever done anything? No, but it's exciting to imagine that I can, and every painting that I challenge myself on, it's the excitement of pushing through that I can, and it's not about that hyper photo feel, it's about that I can, yeah. Right. And that you gotta not get too comfortable with your work. You have to continue to challenge yourself. When I'm done with my pieces, I love to get them out of my view, because I don't want them, I don't want to get comfortable with my work. I don't. I don't want to get too happy with it. I look at my work and I'm very critical. I always imagine what I could have done differently. While I can be a very controlled painter, I like the idea that I can be a very playful painter as well. And I like that in my mind, when I don't necessarily always see paintings in wholes as a whole either. Sometimes, like the big canvas I'm saving to produce right now, a steam engine, a vintage steam engine train. I want to do a certain angle, and I have something in my mind, and I think I know where that train is that I want to produce on that canvas. But even in that, when I first was inspired by the thought of, oh, that's my next engine, it wasn't going to be pretty like this, or it wasn't going to be so precise. In fact, how I saw it in my mind was in broken up in the different styles on the same canvas, where certain aspects of that train engine are going to be very tight and precise, but then other aspects of that train engine are going to be very loose and playful. And it's kind of like big tiles on there is how I picture it, and maybe kind of like, I don't want to say a mosaic, but a collage type painting.
Right.
Because all of it, for me, it's like tying all those different styles in and never getting stuck into one specific groove, but
Right.
keeping it playful and interesting and moving forward on something that's similar but different too. Right, and it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
It's just like this.
It's a learning curve,
This is what we see, folks. A
Right.
learning curve. See that here? That's the only thing you're going to see of me today in the show.
Anyhow, Ruth, thank you so much
Well, thank you,
for
Robin.
letting us come into your space
Yes.
and be in your home, your studio, to see your great work. And folks, pay attention to us. We'll be putting Ruth's information up on screen where you can take a look at her work. Ruth and I are coming to agreement with some of her work, and we'll be at the gallery, RSP Creative Studios, at some point, and we'll let you know through our social media outreach to let you come and personally see all of her work. Ruth is right about that. She goes in many directions, and everything she touches is a beautiful work of art. And I'm glad to have known her. And again, Ruth, thank you for arting about with us.
Well, thank you.
All right.